All right, guys, so I'm going to introduce our next speaker. HFM is one of our sponsors. They've been part of the LB Capital family for almost a year now, right? They've been, most of you probably know from previous events, but fun story, Michael and I, we sat next to each other on an airplane to IRE, and that's kind of, he was already feeling his way around the whole build to sell it, I've been to the conference, but then we really built that relationship, and they've been a great partner. Again, they're just here to educate you today. So HFM helps business owners grow and scale their business, kind of like the LB Capital Blueprint, and then helps you with exit strategies and making the most of your money that you get, not only while you're building your business, but then when you go to exit the business. So I'll turn it over to Michael and Jason.
Kelly, you forgot the best part is that I got Jolene. Jolene sitting next to you on the plane.
She's annoyed of us talking the whole time.
Sorry, Jolene. Well, thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Michael Pelosi. For those of you who were here in April, you got to know Jason and myself. We're sponsors for the year for LB Capital. We're dinner sponsors. So if you are planning on going to dinner tonight, I have tickets for you. If you want to have a ticket, you have to come see me. I'm going to do a little song and dance before you can go. So if you don't get a ticket from me, you can't have dinner at Alfie's, which is a great Italian restaurant. So, and you guys are going to have a good meal tonight. What we're going to present here today is something that Lance was talking about earlier. The reason why everybody's here is you want to sell your business at some point. You want to exit out. And that's going to be life-changing for you and your family. But a lot of people don't think about the steps that you need to take before you sell your business, right? It's great to think about all the hard work you're going to do, the big check that you're going to get someday. But from our experience, the business owners that haven't done the proper planning beforehand fall short in many different ways, whether it's financial, whether they pay too much taxes, whether they haven't thought about what they're going to do the next day after they have a big check in their checking account. So we put together a presentation because what we do is we are financial advisors that help owners in the trades area plan 1 to 3 years before they exit their business. And we have a series of questions and things that you need to think about that my partner Jason is going to go through. So to allow you to think about as you're leading towards this exit, what are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself properly so that when you do sell your company, you're ready to start your life the next stage in your life, not think about it the next day, and hopefully you didn't make the wrong mistake. So we're going to put, follow through the workbook. Jay, do you know what page, it's a couple pages in the...
I think it's page 27. It's the one that looks different from the other ones. That one I can tell you.
It's 26?
26 and 27, thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason. Jason's my business partner at HFM. We are located locally. We're in Glassboro, New Jersey. So anybody in the area that's familiar with that, it's about an hour from here. So we're a local financial planning firm that hopefully you're going to get some good information. We'll be here after the presentation. We'll be at dinner tonight, and then I'll be here all day tomorrow. Right? Sorry, Mike, I didn't do any rapping for you.
About a minute before we went on, Mike Shelley came up and decided that was the time to tell us that we should wrap this like Hamilton, so that you guys would remember us. I'm not going to do that, maybe next time. But today I'm just going to do an old school, regular slide style. Obviously, if you guys have any questions, this is kind of a guide, but feel free to raise your hand. Anything you have is on the brain. That's what we're here for. As Kelly said, we're here to be a resource. So, this is me. This is kind of why we do what we do. So, just like you guys, obviously we're not roofers, but Michael and I are business owners. We have 12 employees. We go through a lot of the same stuff that you guys do as business owners. We have to make payroll. We have to worry about where the next lead's coming from. We do all that stuff. So we've always been passionate about helping business owners. And in the last couple of years, we've really narrowed that focus to helping business owners in the trades. Because we realize there's such a need there for getting a good understanding of what life looks like after the exit, how you position yourself properly. Because every advisor at UBS or Merrill Lynch or Edward Jones wants to be there once you have the check in your hand. But nobody wants to be there 2 or 3 years beforehand to make sure that you're doing things right, proper things are put in place, and that's where we really saw an opportunity, which is what we do. So obviously there's a piece of what we do, like I said, that's exit planning. That's getting everybody ready for the big exit. But we also do wealth management. Obviously, once you have that money and you need to figure out how do I need to invest this so it's a legacy for my future, for my family, things Lance was talking about earlier. And then of course, many of you may have 401k retirement plans for your companies, for your team members. I'm sure to try to kind of wrap around and be able to handle anything that a business owner in the trades would need. So before we get into these questions, kind of tell you a little bit of story, a little bit of a case study about Mike. So Mike is a client of ours. Name's been changed to protect the innocent, right? But he's ran a roofing company in South Jersey. He was doing it like 30 years. He had a great reputation. He was busy every year, and he did sell it. But one of the things that we realized, and that's what kind of started us all out on this path, was he came to us after the fact, and he thought that once he decided to sell it, that was the hard part. That was the part he had to get around. But the reality was, the number that he got was a lot lower than what he needed to live the life he wanted to. He ended up paying a lot more in taxes than he needed to pay, or than he should have paid. It was kind of a mess when he rolled it out. There was really no plan for his estate, for the tax, for any pieces of that. And we had to put those pieces of the story back after the fact. And we realized there's a much better way to do that, and it's ahead of time. And it's getting in a year or 2 or 3 years ahead and making sure that all this stuff is set up, especially if you're beginning with the end in mind, that you're going to sell your business, that you're going to exit your business. So let's start with a show of hands. How many of you guys have a number in your head of what your business would be worth if you sold it tomorrow? Anybody have a number in here? I'm not going to make you say it, but does anybody have that number? There's a place on that workbook page. Just scratch the number down. Give you guys a second. Whatever you think that number would be, just scratch it down today. Of course, not 3 years from now, 2 years from now, but today. So I also want to share some stats with you. So the reality is, I mentioned on one of the other slides, or it was on one of the other slides, I have a certified exit planning advisor designation, right? And one of the things we learned when I was going through that was some of the stats around people selling their businesses. And I think when you see what's going on in the mainstream or Instagram or people's reels, it seems like it's easy to sell a business. But the reality is it's not. And having a business that has value that somebody wants to buy is not that easy. And we realized that for most of you all, most of our business owner clients, 80% of their wealth, 80% of what they build their net worth is wrapped up in their business. But only about 20 to 30% of businesses that go to market actually sell. They're actually businesses that somebody would want to buy. 75% of owners we polled are actually unhappy 12 months after their exit. And only about less than 30% of owners actually have a plan for what they're going to do with their exit, right? Or what they're going to do after their exit. It's not the deal, it's the preparation. The reason that they're not happy, the reason that some of those owners are not, 75% of them are not happy with where they're at 12 months from now, is because they didn't really know what they had, they didn't know what they actually needed, maybe they didn't have advisors that were coordinated, they paid too much in tax, they didn't know what they were doing next. That day that they woke up after the exit, they didn't know what their life was going to be like, or where their purpose was going to come from. We find that a successful exit runs on 3 legs. The first is business planning. That's putting the right things in place in your business. That's what LB Capital is helping you do. So LB is taking care of that leg full throat, right? That's why you guys are here today. That's getting yourself out of the business. That's getting the right systems in the business, making it attractive. But then there's other 2 legs that sometimes get ignored because that business leg becomes the focus. Because that's where we're all, even as business owners ourselves, we fall into that, right? We're so focused on making the business better and dealing with the business every day that the other 2 kind of get left to the back burner, if ever at all. And that's your personal financial planning and life after business. And that's really where we come from. That's where we want to make sure that you have a solid exit plan for what happens to yourself personally, to your family, to your legacy, right? Once you've done the work in that first one. So here's kind of the questions that we feel like most owners who have that successful exit, they were asking themselves this question 2 or 3 years before the exit. And they had good answers. They figured out the answer, right? What's the difference between your tax number and your real number? What's your business worth to a buyer? And will the proceeds be enough to fund the lifestyle you want? Whether that's retirement, like Lance said, some people retire, some don't. They have a very clear picture that I want to start this next business or I want to buy this next business, but I also want to do X, Y, and Z. And so, are the proceeds going to be enough for them? So what's the difference between your tax number and your real number? Obviously, those of you who have ever sat with your accountant at the end of the year, we know that your tax return, or your tax number, you're trying to make that as small as possible, right? How can we get this number down? And that's why you hire a good CPA, that's why you try to do tax planning. You're trying to get that P&L number, that net income, as little as possible, so you have to pay the IRS as little as possible, right? But a buyer's offer is going to be based on what the business truly produces. Anybody know maybe why those wouldn't be the same thing? Who maybe has some spouses on the payroll, or kids on the payroll, or maybe a couple vehicles that might be on the business P&L, right? Not nobody in here, of course, would ever think of doing any of those things, but there's business owners who do that, believe it or not. And so having this kind of understanding of, there's EBITDA, right? That's what your P&L says, that's what you pay tax on. That's what your CPA is going to charge you tax on, right? But we have this concept of recasted EBITDA, and that includes add-backs. I can't tell you how many business owners we sit with, and one of the usually first or second things we talk about is, what does your lifestyle cost right now? If you didn't have the business tomorrow, how much would you need to pay for the lifestyle that you have? And we consistently get the, I know what my salary is, I think I know what I take home draws, but I don't really know. And it's a simple enough question, but most of it's kind of relying on what these add-backs are. So what do you think are common add-backs? Somebody give me one? What's something that's in your business that your business pays for that maybe you'd have to pay for if the business wasn't around? TJ? Phone! Easy one, right? It's like I got 3 phones.
My house. Health insurance.
Health insurance. What else?
House.
House.
Mortgage.
Mortgage, sure. Rent. Sometimes if you own the property and your rent is maybe a little different than what a landlord would charge for whatever reason. We all have our reasons. Cars, like I mentioned. Owner's salary above market. Family members on payroll. One-time legal or equipment costs. People don't realize that, right? So if you go and buy a bunch of trucks because you need trucks, well, you're not going to need those trucks again next year. But when you go sell your P&L to a buyer someday, you're going to have to justify why that shouldn't be in there, or why you really shouldn't be this much in profit. It's all a story. Whether you're going to sell your business, or you have a sell-side advisor who's going to help you, an M&A person, or Lance is going to sell your business, whatever it is, right? You have to tell a story around your P&L. It has to make sense, but you have to know what the real number is. And a lot of times we don't. What's your business worth to a buyer? Buyers don't use gut numbers, right? They use a formula. Anybody know what the formula is? Any thoughts? I'll give you a hint. Half of it is recasted EBITDA, what the business provides in economic value, what it creates in cash flow. What's the other half? Multiple, exactly. So it's pretty straightforward, right? The multiple is what gives us the end value, business value, right? We have to have an accurate recasted EBITDA, that number that includes add-backs that can be defended, right? So we know this is why it should look like this. Bless you. So obviously your job is to maximize both sides of the equation. Some things are within our control, some are not, right? Obviously, recast EBITDA to some degree is within our control to the extent that we can make more money, right? But the multiple, the range of multiples is what it is based on what the private market is willing to pay. Lance kind of laid that out already, what it stands like today, at least for roofing companies, right? Your typical is getting 4, your best in class are getting 8 or 9. That's the range there. You're going to fall somewhere on there. What dictates where you fall in that range, whether you're on that lower 3 to 4 side, or you're on the higher 8 or 9 side, is what you have in place, right? So what moves the multiple? What do you think would put you on the higher side of that multiple? What would make you more valuable to a buyer?
systemized business that runs predictable, that doesn't require the owner, just
Yeah.
operates like a franchise.
Yeah, the less owner dependent the business is, huge marks, right? Having consistent, predictable marketing that delivers the same results all the time. Having a sales process in place that delivers predictable results, like Microsoft, not Microsoft, right? The more you can capitalize on things that make your business of better quality to a buyer. Because one of the things we're always starting to train our clients on is when you're thinking about exit planning, you have to think about it in terms of not you, the owner, right? We always kid, nobody wants to admit they have an ugly baby, right? But a buyer's gonna look at it, and if it's ugly, they're gonna say it's ugly, right? And they're not gonna care. And so you have to look at it like a buyer. Where are the warts and all, right? Where are the things that, if you were buying this business as an investor, would you question? Because they will question, right? And they want to know. And so the things that drive premiums, the things that drive your multiple higher, recurring revenue, strong team. I mean, recurring revenue is a perfect example. And I know for different industries, it's harder to get things like that on the books, but it definitely adds. I just got an ad the other day from the company that did my granite. So they did the granite in my kitchen. I haven't heard from them in 5 years, but they randomly sent me an email about a package they have. It's 140 bucks. I think it's 140 bucks a year. They come out, seal it, guarantee it against whatever. Now, I know why they're doing that. They're doing it because of that. Clearly, they're trying to sell the business, and somebody told them they need a recurring revenue, right? Brilliant. It's a little thing that they can do to get people on the books, get revenue on the books going in the future, right? Owner not needed daily. Hit that one right on the head. That's probably the most common one we see in businesses of the size that we're talking about here. The more you can build yourself out, the better. Clean financials. I had a conversation probably a month ago with Joe Lynn about that because I was curious what they talked to you guys about. That's the number one thing, is getting your financials clean, getting all the crap out of there so that there's less to defend when you're sitting across from a buyer, when you're going through due diligence, right? Having a diversified customer base, and then the stuff that discounts. You know, the more you have revenue concentration, the more you have messy or inconsistent books, if you don't have documented systems, right? Those things are actually gonna drive the multiple lower. That's what's gonna get you into that 3-4 range, right? The last question I mentioned before, will the proceeds be enough? So, I mean, anybody who's had a business, whether it's what you all do, whether it's what we do, it doesn't matter. You've sacrificed, probably a lot. Right? Weekends, vacations, years of your life. My dark colored hairs are gone. Like all those things we sacrifice to build the businesses we have, right? And the goal is to make a legacy for you and your family, not just to get by, right? You actually want to make sure that it's going to create the life that you want, but you need a clear picture of what that life looks like. And so when we work with clients, we always want to make sure we figure out up front, what is the wealth gap? What is the gap between what you have today in investments, cash, real estate, all the things over here? And I think there's a little simplified version in that workbook, right? And what do you need? And this one is really driven by, what do you want your lifestyle to be like in retirement? What things do you want? And when I say retirement, I should say post-exit, right? So do you want to buy another business? Do you want to start another business? How much is that going to cost? Do you want to retire? You have to support your life off this money forever. You're going to do things for your kids. You're going to do things for your parents. You're going to do, what's the plan after exit? And what does that all cost? So we have what we have today, and we have all the things we want to do, and what that's going to cost. The middle is the gap, and that's what the business sale will need to close. So having a clear sense of what the business is worth, and what that progression looks like, and what you're going to net after taxes is important, because we need to know, is it going to clear that gap or not? I'd rather know a year or 2 or 3 before than the day after settlement when you have that check. It's like, it's great, but that's not going to do everything you want it to do. So this is kind of what I mentioned before. How much annual income would you need to fund your lifestyle with all the income and benefits from the business style? This is just one of those fundamental things that we should know. So basically, those were just 3 questions. They're in there. Spend some time with it. I mean, if you have some time this week, just to kind of think about, because you probably don't. none of us spend enough time thinking about what all this means to our personal life, which is ironic because that's probably why we're doing it, right? But we get so wrapped up in the business side. So take some time, work through those exercises. If you have any questions, we're here. We're a resource. Part of the reason we align with LV for a year and longer is because we don't expect everybody to become a client tomorrow, right? We're just here to be a resource to you guys. And so if you have questions, let us know. One of the things that we do to help people figure out where they are in their personal financial readiness for an exit is we built the Built Wealth ladder. So everything from rung 1 to rung 5, right? Rung 1 is square one. Building the business, you just head down, making it happen, right? Rung 2 is protecting what you built, because a lot of people forget to do that because they're so focused on what they're doing a couple years from now. Rung 3 is really making sure you have a sense of the gap and what you need to close. Rung 4 is the exit is imminent. Now we're figuring out, right, the deals that are coming through, the LOIs that are coming through, the structures that are coming through, what does that actually mean to your financial life, to your goals, to all the things we laid out? Does it work? Does it not work? What's better? What's worse? How do we build a tax plan around that, right? And then rung 5 is, of course, we've exited, and now we're gonna make sure that those proceeds and that wealth is protected and growing for your family, for whatever you want it to do for the rest of your life, right? Process. So this is for anybody who wants to stay in touch with us. We have a newsletter we do every week. Talk about exit planning for people in the trade. You can sign up for it on the left. Job walk calls, that's our just initial 30-minute call where we just go through the ladder and help you figure out where you're at. Where are you in the exit planning journey personally? And what could you do to improve that? Any questions, anything that I didn't touch on that you want me to dive a little more into?
How much is a job walk call?
Complimentary, great question. Yes, the job walk is complimentary. That's where we just give you guys a little information. We want to give you guys enough to feel like you know what that exit journey looks like personally. Just like Dave giving you the playbook. It's kind of like our version of a shop walk, shop tour, they call it, right?
How far out do you said a couple years?
Yeah, so we usually shoot like 1 to 3 years. 1 to 3 years is where it's really good to do that. That way you're not scrambling when it's not. Any other questions? Contact info is up there. Definitely sign up for the newsletter. That's our disclosure because that's how our industry works. Make sure you read that. That's everything I have for you guys. Thank you very much. And, we'll see you guys on the board.